The house on Willowmere Lane had no address. Only a gate, rusted shut, and a narrow path swallowed by weeds. Eleanor found it anyway. She arrived with one suitcase, a cat named Thimble, and a silence that followed her like a shadow on her back. No neighbors, no power lines, just trees and the creak of the wind through rotting limbs. She pushed open the door. It didn't resist, just yawned wide like something waking from sleep. Inside, the air was thick, old, like it had forgotten how to move. She chose the attic room. Low ceiling, narrow bed, one window facing the orchard, where no birds sang. Thimble curled on the windowsill. The house groaned softly, settling around them like a creature curling back into rest. She slept, but the house did not. That first night, she heard footsteps beneath her bed. In the morning, she laughed it off. Old house, old bones, maybe just the wind, but the boards in the hallway were clean. Too clean, like someone had walked there recently. And Thimble wouldn't leave the windowsill. She found a door behind the pantry. Painted over, sealed long ago. She ran her fingers along the frame, felt cold air seeping through. She whispered, "Is someone down there?" Something answered. A tap. 3 slow knocks. From the other side. That night, she dreamed of singing. A voice just beyond the walls. High and sweet, but cracked, like a lullaby sung through broken teeth. She woke to her bed shaking, as though someone was crawling underneath. Thimble was gone. Eleanor pried open the sealed door. Dust spilled out like smoke. Beyond it, a staircase spiraled down into the dark. She descended 3 steps before the cold stopped her heart mid-beat. A breath touched her ear. "Keep going," it said. She fled back upstairs. The next day, her name was scratched into the floorboards beside her bed. Neatly carved. Fresh. She had no knife. The radio turned itself on. All static. Until it whispered, "She remembers you." She unplugged it. It stayed on. She began to forget how long she'd been here. The clocks all stopped. Her phone blinked, no service, until the screen cracked on its own. There were no mirrors left. Each one shattered. Even the puddles outside refused to show her face. She read the wallpaper like it was a diary. Beneath the curls of faded print, messages had been written in ash. "Sleep deeper. She sings below. She's waiting to be named." She opened the stairwell again. This time, she brought a candle. It died before the bottom step. Still, she kept going. At the bottom was a hall. Walls dripping, breathing. A child's voice echoed through the dark. "Come find me." She followed. A room waited at the end. Stone walls. No door. In the center, a crib. Empty. Rocking slowly. By itself. Carved into the side. "Don't wake her." Eleanor felt the lullaby in her throat. She didn't know the words. But she'd heard them once, long ago, when her mother left her in the cold. She didn't remember leaving the house as a child. But maybe she never had. Another name was etched in the stone, Enora Vale. Age 7. Returned. The next night, the girl came. Stood in the corner of the attic. Hair soaked. Fingernails torn. "You remember now," she said. Eleanor nodded. She did. She had been the crying baby beneath the floor. She had never left. Just grown quiet enough to be forgotten. The house had waited. The girl took her hand. Led her down. This time, the floor didn't resist. She laid down in the nursery. The walls throbbed like lungs. The crib rocked gently beside her. 100 soft voices hummed in the dark. She's home now. Upstairs, the attic is empty again. The floor creaks sometimes. Not from age, but from memory. The house on Willowmere Lane is quiet. For now. But the listing is still there. Buried deep online. No photos. Just a few words. Charming. Remote. Must be seen to be understood. And if you visit, don't step on the loose boards. Eleanor's listening. Still humming the lullaby no one taught her. Not in this life, anyway. The old lighthouse stood solitary on the jagged cliffs of Oakhaven, its whitewashed tower perpetually damp from the relentless sea mist. Alara arrived seeking solitude, a refuge from a life that had become too loud. The lighthouse keeper before her had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a sparsely furnished living space and the rhythmic groan of the foghorn. Her only companion was a battered book of local legends she found tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Tales of ships lost in the dense fog, and whispers of the lighthouse being built atop an ancient, forgotten burial ground. The villagers in Oakhaven spoke of strange lights flickering when the lamp was extinguished, and mournful cries carried on the wind even when the sea was calm. Alara dismissed them as folklore, the product of an isolated community and the lonely moan of the foghorn. The first night, a chill permeated the air, deeper than the ocean's breath. The wind howled outside, rattling the thick glass of the lantern room, but downstairs, in her small bedroom, the air was still and heavy. She dreamt of crashing waves and faces pressed against the glass of the lighthouse, their eyes wide with terror. She awoke to find the heavy oak door of her room slightly ajar. She was certain she had bolted it shut the night before. A line of salt, impossibly thick, had been deposited along the threshold, as if the sea itself had crept in during the night. She swept it away, a prickle of unease beginning to form beneath her skin. Days turned into a week, marked only by the sweeping beam of the lamp and the mournful bellow of the foghorn. Alara found a strange comfort in the solitude, losing herself in the rhythm of the lighthouse. But the whispers started subtly. A faint scratching sound from the walls, like tiny claws dragging across stone. A sigh that seemed to emanate from the empty stairwell. One evening, while tending to the lamp, she noticed something carved into the brass railing. A series of symbols, unlike any she had ever seen. They felt old, primal, radiating a strange coldness to the touch. Later that night, she found the same symbols sketched in the condensation on her bedroom window. The legends in the old book began to take on a new weight. Stories of the drowned ones, souls lost at sea whose bodies were never recovered, forever searching for a way back to shore. It was said their sorrow clung to the land around Oakhaven, their despair woven into the very fabric of the lighthouse. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, often accompanied by a low, guttural moan. Alara started sleeping with the lamp beside her bed, its warm glow a small comfort against the encroaching darkness. One morning, she found the book of legends open on the floor beside her bed, its pages rustling despite the closed windows. The symbols she had seen on the railing were circled in a shaky, unfamiliar hand. The fog grew thicker, clinging to the lighthouse like a shroud. The foghorn blared incessantly, its mournful cry seeming to echo the growing unease within her. The beam of the lamp, usually cutting through the thickest mist, now seemed weak and hesitant, swallowed quickly by the oppressive fog. One night, the power flickered and died, plunging the lighthouse into darkness. The foghorn fell silent. A terrifying stillness descended, broken only by the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below, closer and more violent than she had ever heard them. Alara fumbled for her flashlight, its beam a weak circle in the overwhelming blackness. As she made her way to the backup generator, she heard it, a chorus of faint whispers, seemingly coming from the walls themselves. They were soft, sorrowful, like the cries of lost children. And then, a voice, clearer than the rest, right beside her ear. "You shouldn't have come here." She stumbled back, her heart pounding. The beam of her flashlight caught something in the corner of the stairwell, a shimmering, translucent figure, its face contorted in an expression of eternal grief. It reached out a spectral hand towards her. Alara didn't scream. She ran, up the winding stairs, towards the lantern room, the only place she felt might offer some semblance of safety. The whispers followed her, swirling around her like the fog outside. The spectral figure glided effortlessly behind her, its mournful eyes fixed on her back. She reached the lantern room, the thick glass offering a distorted view of the swirling fog. The air was thick with the smell of salt and something else, something ancient and cold. The spectral figure materialized before her, blocking the doorway. Its whispered words echoed in her mind. "This place remembers. It doesn't let go." Alara looked out at the raging sea, the waves crashing against the rocks like hungry jaws. She understood then. The lighthouse wasn't just a beacon, it was a prison, holding the sorrow of the drowned ones, and now, it intended to hold her too. The whispers intensified, becoming a deafening chorus of despair. The last thing Alara saw was the spectral figure reaching for her, its touch like the icy grip of the grave, before the darkness finally consumed her. Months later, another keeper was sent to Oakhaven. He found the lighthouse empty, the lamp dark, and a thick layer of salt covering every surface. The Book of Legends lay open on the floor of the lantern room, its pages stained with seawater. And on the brass railing, amongst the ancient symbols, one new carving had appeared, a single name, Alara. Sometimes, on the foggiest nights, the villagers still claim they see two lights flickering from the abandoned lighthouse, and hear two mournful cries carried on the wind. 1. The Clockwork Orchard. The old manor house stood at the end of a long, unkempt drive, surrounded by an orchard where the apple trees grew in unnaturally perfect rows. Elias, a restorer of antique mechanisms, had purchased it sight unseen, drawn by the rumored presence of a unique clockwork automaton. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it hummed with an almost imperceptible metallic thrum. His first night, he heard it, a faint, intricate ticking, not from his own antique watch, but from somewhere deep within the house. He traced the sound to the library, where all the books were bound in polished brass, their spines engraved with impossible gears. He dreamt of tiny gears turning in his own chest, and a metallic taste in his mouth. In the morning, a delicate, intricately carved wooden bird was perched on his pillow, its eyes like polished obsidian. It hadn't been there the night before. He looked out at the orchard. The apple trees seemed to shift slightly, their branches bending with an unseen weight. The ticking grew louder, a relentless pulse. Elias discovered a hidden room behind a revolving bookcase. Inside, dust motes danced in the single shaft of light, illuminating a workshop filled with disassembled clockwork parts. A large, empty workbench dominated the center, its surface covered in microscopic scratches. He found a single, tarnished brass key. He began to notice strange changes. The grandfather clock in the hall, long broken, chimed on the hour, its hands moving with a precise, unnatural grace. The wind chimes outside, untouched by any breeze, would suddenly sing with a dissonant, mechanical melody. He'd find small, perfectly formed brass gears scattered on the floor. One evening, he followed the ticking to the orchard. Each apple tree seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. He touched a tree, and beneath the bark, he felt a faint, rhythmic vibration. The brass key felt hot in his hand. He heard a whisper, like the winding of 1,000 tiny springs, "Assemble us." He worked for days, driven by an unseen compulsion. The pieces from the workshop, along with new ones that seemed to appear each night, fit together with an eerie precision. As he connected the final gear, a low, resonant whir filled the room. Before him stood a life-sized automaton of a child, its eyes dark and unblinking. The automaton spoke, its voice a delicate series of clicks and whistles. "We are complete." Elias felt a profound emptiness, a sense of his own purpose dissolving. The ticking was no longer just around him, it was within him. He looked down at his hands. They felt strangely stiff, his movements precise, mechanical. The orchard outside no longer looked like trees. Each one was a towering, silent automaton, their branches like intricate brass limbs, their leaves like polished emerald gears. The air thrummed with a unified, synchronized beat. Elias walked out, no longer feeling the grass beneath his feet, but the smooth, cool certainty of interconnected mechanisms. The house is quiet now, save for the ceaseless, perfect ticking that emanates from the heart of the orchard, forever in motion. 2. The Unwritten Labyrinth. The old library in Blackwood Falls had been abandoned for decades, its vast collection of forgotten texts left to decay. Sarah, an archivist with an affinity for the lost and obscure, rented a small cottage nearby, drawn by the promise of untold literary treasures. The air in the library was thick with the scent of mildew and decaying paper, a smell she found strangely comforting. Her first night, she heard it, a faint rustling, like pages turning in an empty room. She dismissed it as drafts. But in the morning, a single, ancient volume lay open on a table, its pages blank, yet she felt an unseen hand tracing lines across the parchment. She dreamt of endless corridors of shelves, stretching into an infinite, silent void. Days blurred into weeks, filled with the quiet rustle of turning pages. Sarah discovered that some of the books were entirely blank, yet their weight felt heavier, their presence more profound than any filled with words. She found a faint, unreadable inscription on the library's cornerstone, too faded to discern. The rustling grew more insistent, sometimes accompanied by a soft, almost inaudible sigh. She started to find ink stains on her fingertips, though she hadn't touched any ink. The library felt larger, the aisles longer, the ceilings higher than she remembered. Sometimes, when she looked down a row of shelves, the perspective would warp, as if the very space was shifting. One night, she found a series of symbols carved into the spine of a blank book, glowing faintly in the dim light. They were strange, like letters that had never been written, yet they felt intensely familiar. As she traced them, a chill permeated the air, and a voice, like the whisper of 1,000 turning pages, spoke in her mind, "Write us." She began to write, not with a pen, but with her fingers, tracing the symbols onto the blank pages. As she did, the library seemed to hum with an unseen energy. The blank books would tremble, and the very air would vibrate with unspoken narratives. She wrote for days, feeling a profound connection to the unwritten stories, her own thoughts dissolving into the collective silence of the texts. As the last symbol was etched into the final page, the library groaned, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through her bones. The shelves began to shift, the aisles rearranging themselves into a complex, ever-changing labyrinth. The books, no longer just paper and ink, pulsed with a faint, internal light. Sarah felt her own memories dissolving, replaced by fragments of unwritten histories, forgotten characters, and narratives that had never found their voice. She walked through the shifting corridors, no longer seeking refuge from the world, but becoming part of the world she had sought to preserve. Her own story was now unwritten, absorbed into the vast, silent chronicle of the library. The library in Blackwood Falls remains, a living, breathing testament to stories untold, its unwritten labyrinth perpetually shifting, waiting for someone to try and decipher the blank pages. 3. The hum of the forgotten well. The isolated cottage on the moor was accessible only by a winding, overgrown track. Leo, a sound engineer, had retreated there, seeking inspiration in the silence, hoping to capture the untouched sonic landscape of the wilderness. He knew nothing of the old well, hidden beneath a stone slab near the back porch, its existence a local secret. His first night, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the cottage floorboards. It was too deep for the wind, too rhythmic for the house settling. He dreamt of a deep, resonant echo, a voice singing from an impossible depth. In the morning, the hum was gone, but the air felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. He noticed a faint tremor in the earth beneath his feet, a subtle vibration that seemed to emanate from the very ground. He found a small, rusted iron bucket lying beside the stone slab covering the well, a bucket that hadn't been there before. Leo opened the well. A profound, earthy smell, mixed with the scent of damp stone, wafted up. He lowered a microphone, hoping to capture the unique acoustics. What he recorded wasn't silence, but a faint, guttural gurgle, followed by a series of chilling, almost rhythmic thumps. The hum returned each night, louder, more insistent, accompanied now by a subtle vibration that rattled the window panes. He started to hear faint whispers, not distinct words, but a cacophony of overlapping voices, echoing as if from a vast, water-filled chamber. He found small, smooth river stones arranged in precise patterns on his doorstep. One evening, he leaned over the well, drawn by an irresistible curiosity. The hum was directly beneath him, a powerful, vibrating presence that seemed to pull at his very core. He heard a voice, wet and ancient, rising from the darkness. Listen closer. He recorded constantly, the well becoming his sole focus. The sounds from within grew more complex, a rhythmic slapping, a sorrowful keening, a series of clicks that sounded like something vast and heavy moving through water. His own voice began to deepen, his own breath to echo with a strange, guttural quality. As he listened, the cottage began to change. Water seeped through the floorboards, forming small, dark puddles that never dried. The air became perpetually damp, thick with the scent of earth and stagnant water. He felt a profound sense of pressure, as if he were miles beneath the surface, the weight of the earth pressing down on him. One morning, he woke to find himself lying on the cold stone of the well's edge, his recording equipment scattered around him. The hum was all-encompassing, no longer an external sound, but a vibration within his own bones. He looked down into the well, and in the profound darkness, he saw only a reflection of a face, eyes wide and unseeing, mouth open in a silent, echoing cry. The well at the cottage is never truly silent now. A deep, resonant hum vibrates beneath the moor, a sound no longer of the earth, but of something far, far older, forever trapped in its depths. 4. The last echoes of St. Augustine. The old church of St. Augustine, perched on a desolate hill overlooking a forgotten valley, had long been abandoned, its stained glass windows shattered, its wooden pews splintered. Dr. R.S. Thorne, a linguist specializing in dead languages, sought it out, hoping to decipher a rumored ancient inscription said to be hidden within its crumbling walls. The silence here was vast, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind through the broken bell tower. His first night, he heard it, a faint, ethereal choir, singing in a language he couldn't place, yet one that resonated deep within his soul. He dreamt of intricate vocal patterns, of words that held impossible power. In the morning, the singing was gone, but the air felt charged with a strange resonance, as if lingering vibrations still hung in the dust. He found a single, perfectly preserved page of parchment, its text written in a script that defied any known language, yet felt hauntingly familiar. He began to explore the church, its grandeur still evident beneath the layers of decay. The choir's whispers grew clearer at night, sometimes punctuated by a lone, perfect note, held for an impossible duration. He started to find ancient, intricately carved symbols appearing on the crumbling stone walls, seemingly manifesting from the very dust. One evening, he discovered a hidden crypt beneath the altar. The air within was thick with a scent like old incense and dried flowers. On the sarcophagus, a single, unblemished human bone lay, engraved with the same symbols he had been seeing. He felt a chilling presence, and a voice, resonant and ancient, echoed in the stillness, "Sing our words." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Aras began to vocalize the symbols, his voice blending with the spectral choir that now surrounded him. As he sang, the church seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light. The shattered stained glass windows would shimmer, briefly whole again, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the floor. He felt his own voice transforming, deepening, capable of impossible range. As the final note faded, the church trembled, a low, guttural groan that seemed to rise from the very foundations. The crypt opened further, revealing a swirling void of ancient sounds in spectral light. Aras felt his own identity dissolving, his knowledge of language becoming one with the ancient, unwritten hymns. He was no longer a linguist, but a vessel, a conduit for the echoes of St. Augustine. The church on the hill is silent once more, but if you listen closely on a windless night, you might hear a faint, lingering echo, a wordless hymn, a language that was never meant for mortal ears, forever sung by the forgotten choir of St. Augustine. 5. The Root of Whispers. The cabin in the deepest part of the redwood forest was almost invisible, swallowed by the ancient, colossal trees. Maya, a botanist fascinated by old-growth ecosystems, sought it out for a long-term study, drawn by the profound, almost spiritual stillness of the giants. The silence here was not empty. It vibrated with the slow, deliberate pulse of the forest. Her first night, she heard it, a low, rhythmic thrumming, not from the wind, but from deep within the earth, like a colossal heartbeat. She dreamt of vast, interconnected roots, stretching infinitely beneath the surface, pulsing with an unseen life. In the morning, the thrumming was gone, but the air felt charged, almost electric. She found a single, unnaturally smooth, dark root, coiled perfectly on her doorstep, a root that she was certain hadn't been there before. Maya began to explore the forest, drawn by an invisible force. The thrumming returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, rustling whisper, like thousands of leaves rubbing together, or a collective, low sigh. She started to find delicate, intricate patterns woven from roots and moss appearing on her cabin walls, seemingly growing overnight. One evening, she stumbled upon a clearing where the largest redwoods formed a perfect circle, their trunks impossibly wide. In the center, a gaping hole in the earth, overgrown with ancient, twisting roots, pulsed with a dim, phosphorescent light. A voice, ancient and resonant, seemed to rise from the very ground. "Join us." Driven by an irresistible urge, Maya lowered herself into the root-filled abyss. The thrumming became a deafening roar, reverberating through her very bones. The whispers intensified, no longer distinct sounds, but a cacophony of ancient knowledge, of the slow, enduring life of the forest, flowing directly into her mind. Her own body felt as if it were transforming, her skin roughening, her fingers lengthening, becoming more like bark and root. As she sank deeper, her vision became obscured by the swirling roots and glowing moss. She felt a profound sense of connection, of being part of something vast and eternal, her individual consciousness dissolving into the collective consciousness of the forest. She was no longer Maya, the botanist, but a living extension of the redwood whispers, a conduit for their ancient, earth-bound memory. The cabin in the redwood forest is now empty, save for the faint, rhythmic thrumming that emanates from the deep earth. If you wander into that clearing, you might feel a subtle tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might just hear a whisper, not of the wind, but of the very roots themselves, forever murmuring their ancient secrets. 6. The glitch in the loom. The isolated textile mill, deep in the forgotten industrial district, had stood derelict for decades, its massive loom silent, rusted. Clara, a textile artist obsessed with historical weaving techniques, had bought it for a song, seeing only the potential in its vast, empty spaces. The silence here was heavy, laced with the metallic tang of old machinery and faint, lingering scent of cotton. Her first night, she heard it, a rhythmic clack-thump, like a loom operating in the distance, despite the mill being devoid of power. She dreamt of endless threads, weaving themselves into impossible patterns, and the feel of rough, invisible fabric against her skin. In the morning, the sound was gone, but a single, perfectly formed, impossibly intricate swatch of fabric lay on her workbench, woven with threads she didn't recognize. She found a faint, almost invisible shimmer in the air near the largest loom, like heat rising from a working machine. Clara began to explore the vast mill, drawn by an unseen force. The clack-thump returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, rhythmic humming, like the quiet whir of a giant, unseen motor. She started to find strange, geometric patterns woven into the dust on the floor, patterns that would shift and change when she looked away. One evening, she approached the largest loom, a monstrous contraption of rusted iron and broken wood. It seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light. She felt a profound cold emanating from it, and a voice, dry and mechanical, whispered directly into her mind, "Weave us." Driven by an inexplicable compulsion, Clara began to operate the loom, though it had no power, no thread she could see. Her hands moved with a precise, almost unnatural grace, pulling levers, throwing shuttles that weren't there. As she wove, the mill seemed to hum with a growing energy. The rhythmic clack-thump intensified, becoming a deafening roar, as if hundreds of invisible looms were working in unison. As the unseen fabric stretched across the ethereal loom, Clara felt her own memories fraying, her identity unwinding like a loose thread. She was no longer just Clara, the artist, but an extension of the loom itself, a weaver of unseen patterns, a part of the vast, intricate tapestry of the mill's forgotten purpose. The very air filled with shimmering, invisible threads, tangling around her, binding her. The old textile mill is quiet now, the clack-thump ceased. But if you stand in its vast, empty spaces, you might feel a faint vibration in the air, and if you listen closely, you might hear the whisper of unseen threads, forever weaving, forever trapping the unmade patterns of the mill's endless work. 7. The Song of the Petrified Forest. The cabin in the petrified forest was an anomaly, a tiny human dwelling surrounded by colossal, stone trees. Anya, a geologist specializing in ancient transformations, had leased it for a year, drawn by the unique fossilized landscape. The silence here was profound, echoing with the vast, unmoving stillness of a world turned to stone. Her first night, she heard it, a faint, crystalline ringing, like thousands of tiny chimes, emanating from the stone trees themselves. She dreamt of slow, agonizing transformations, of living wood turning to unyielding stone, of voices trapped within the rock. In the morning, the ringing was gone, but the air felt strangely brittle, as if it too might shatter. She found a single, perfectly preserved, ancient leaf, turned entirely to stone, lying on her windowsill, a leaf that she was certain hadn't been there before. Anya began to explore the petrified landscape, drawn by an invisible current. The crystalline ringing returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, resonant hum, like a deep, sorrowful sigh. She started to find intricate, swirling patterns etched into the surface of the stone trees, patterns that seemed to shift and deepen with the light. One evening, she found a small, hidden cavern beneath the roots of the largest petrified tree. The air within was thick with a strange, metallic scent, and in the center lay a perfectly preserved human hand, turned entirely to stone. A voice, hard and unyielding like rock, echoed in the stillness, "Sing our stillness." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Anya began to hum, a low, resonant note that vibrated through her bones. As she sang, the cavern seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light. The stone hand glowed, and the petrified trees outside began to hum in unison, their crystalline ringing intensifying into a deafening symphony. She felt her own body solidifying, her movements becoming slow, deliberate, her skin hardening. As the song reached its crescendo, the cavern groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the earth. Anya felt her own consciousness dissolving, her human thoughts replaced by the slow, enduring memory of stone. She was no longer Anya, the geologist, but a part of the petrified forest itself, a silent, enduring testament to ancient transformations. The cabin in the petrified forest stands empty now, but if you listen closely on a still night, you might hear a faint, crystalline ringing carried on the wind, a song of sorrow and stillness, sung by the ancient, petrified beings trapped forever in the unyielding embrace of stone. 8. The whispering walls of the asylum. The old asylum on the bluffs of Havenwood had been shuttered for a century, its history a grim tapestry of forgotten souls. Thomas, a historian specializing in forgotten institutions, leased it for a year, drawn by the profound, unsettling quiet of its decaying wards. The silence here was not peaceful, it vibrated with a lingering, almost palpable despair. His first night, he heard it, a faint, rhythmic scratching, like fingernails dragging across plaster, coming from the walls themselves. He dreamt of echoing screams, of desperate whispers, of faces pressed against grimy glass. In the morning, the scratching was gone, but a faint, distinct scent of iodine and something metallic, like old blood, hung in the air. He found a single, tarnished brass key, too large for any lock he could find, lying in the middle of a bare room, a key that hadn't been there before. Thomas began to explore the sprawling asylum, drawn by an invisible, unsettling force. The scratching returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone compulsively knocking on a distant door. He started to find faded, barely legible scrawlings appearing on the walls, phrases like, "they watch," and "no escape," appearing from beneath layers of ancient paint. One evening, he stumbled upon a hidden padded cell, its door rusted shut. The air within was thick with a profound, suffocating despair. On the floor, a single, antique straitjacket lay, its buckles rusted. A voice, thin and reedy, whispered from the padded walls, "Tell our story." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Thomas began to record, not just with his equipment, but with his mind, absorbing the silent narratives woven into the very fabric of the asylum. The scratching intensified, becoming a frantic chorus of unseen hands. The whispers became clearer, distinct voices, recounting fragmented memories of torment, loneliness, and despair. His own thoughts began to fray, his own sanity feeling tenuous, as if the walls were absorbing his own consciousness into their ancient, collective suffering. As the last voice faded, the asylum groaned, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to rise from the very foundations. The padded cell pulsed with a faint, internal light, and the walls themselves seemed to breathe, inhaling and exhaling the trapped despair. Thomas felt his own identity dissolving, his own memories replaced by the fragmented lives of the asylum's forgotten residents. He was no longer Thomas, the historian, but a keeper of their endless sorrow, a part of the asylum's unyielding memory. The old asylum on the bluffs is silent once more, but if you listen closely on a windless night, you might hear a faint, rhythmic scratching, or a barely audible whisper, carried on the damp air, forever telling the story of the forgotten souls trapped within its walls. 1. The Garden of Whispering Stone. The secluded estate was known only by legend, its gates swallowed by ivy, its name forgotten. Emilia, a landscape architect with a passion for historical gardens, found it by chance, drawn by the unusual stone formations rumored to exist within its overgrown grounds. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it felt heavy, imbued with an ancient, stony stillness. Her first night, she heard it, a faint, guttural grinding, like massive rocks slowly shifting, emanating from deep within the garden. She dreamt of roots twisting into stone, of faces slowly hardening into grotesque effigies, forever caught in silent screams. In the morning, the grinding was gone, but the air felt thick with mineral dust. She found a small, smooth pebble on her windowsill, impossibly cold to the touch, and carved with a swirling pattern she didn't recognize. The light seemed to refract strangely through the garden, creating distorted shadows. Emilia began to explore the vast, overgrown garden, drawn by an invisible current. The grinding returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a low, mournful moan, like wind sighing through ancient caverns. She started to find delicate, intricate carvings appearing on the stone pathways, patterns that seemed to deepen with each passing day. One evening, she discovered a hidden grotto, its entrance choked with petrified vines. Inside, Colossal stone figures stood frozen in attitudes of despair, their faces contorted in silent agony. The air within was thick with a profound, crushing weight, and a voice, rough and resonant like grinding stone, echoed in the stillness, "Become us." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Emilia reached out to touch one of the figures. As her fingers met the cold stone, a tremor ran through the grotto, and the grinding intensified, becoming a deafening roar. The stone figures began to hum in unison, their silent screams transforming into a low, mournful chant that vibrated through her very bones. Her own body felt as if it were solidifying, her movements becoming slow, deliberate, her skin hardening. As the chant reached its crescendo, the grotto groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the earth. Emilia felt her own consciousness dissolving, her human thoughts replaced by the slow, enduring memory of stone. She was no longer Emilia, the architect, but a part of the garden itself, a silent, enduring testament to ancient despair, forever caught in the stone embrace. The secluded estate is silent once more, but if you wander into its overgrown garden, you might feel a faint tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might hear a low, mournful moan carried on the wind, a song of sorrow and stillness, sung by the ancient, petrified forms trapped forever in the unyielding embrace of stone. 2. The thrumming beneath the bog. The remote cabin on the edge of the vast, peat-black bog was a haven for quiet contemplation. Marcus, an amateur ornithologist, sought it out for its elusive migratory birds, hoping to record their unique calls. The silence here wasn't empty. It was a damp, earthy stillness, thick with the scent of decaying vegetation. His first night, he heard it, a low, rhythmic thrumming, not from the wind, but from deep beneath the bog, like a colossal, buried drum. He dreamt of murky water, of things stirring in the unseen depths, of muffled cries rising to the surface. In the morning, the thrumming was gone, but the air felt heavy with moisture, even indoors. He found a single, perfectly formed, impossibly green moss clump on his doorstep, pulsating faintly with a soft, internal light. The ground around the cabin felt unusually soft, almost spongy. Marcus began to explore the bog, drawn by an invisible current. The thrumming returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, wet sucking sound, like something vast moving through thick mud. He started to find strange, geometric patterns etched into the surface of the bog water, patterns that would ripple and distort when he looked away. One evening, he stumbled upon a deep, circular pool in the bog, its water unnaturally still and dark. The air above it was thick with a profound cold, and a voice, gurgling and ancient, seemed to rise from the depths. "Come down." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Marcus lowered his hand into the water. The thrumming became a deafening roar, reverberating through his very bones. The sucking sounds intensified, no longer distinct sounds, but a cacophony of ancient life, of things moving unseen beneath the surface, flowing directly into his mind. His own body felt as if it were dissolving, his skin becoming slick with mud, his fingers lengthening into tendrils. As he sank deeper, his vision became obscured by the murky water and the swirling peat. He felt a profound sense of connection, of being part of something vast and eternal, his individual consciousness dissolving into the collective consciousness of the bog. He was no longer Marcus, the ornithologist, but a living extension of the bog's ancient whispers, a conduit for its hidden, earth-bound memories. The cabin on the edge of the bog is now empty, save for the faint, rhythmic thrumming that emanates from the deep earth. If you wander near that circular pool, you might feel a subtle tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might just hear a low, gurgling whisper, not of the wind, but of the very bog itself, forever murmuring its ancient secrets. 3. The House of Shifting Bones. The Victorian house in the forgotten cul-de-sac was known for its unsettling history, a tale of disappearances and strange structural shifts. Eleanor, a structural engineer with an interest in historical architecture, bought it for its unique, almost organic design, hoping to unravel its secrets. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it felt tight, imbued with an unseen, constant tension. Her first night, she heard it, a faint, rhythmic creaking and popping, like old timber settling, but more precise, more deliberate. She dreamt of walls breathing, of floors undulating like a living skin, and the unsettling sensation of being slowly compressed. In the morning, the sounds were gone, but the air felt heavy, dense, as if the very space had shifted. She found a single, perfectly smooth, bleached bone, impossibly small, lying on her pillow, a bone that she was certain hadn't been there before. The house itself seemed to subtly expand and contract, its very foundations alive. Eleanor began to explore the house, drawn by an invisible force. The creaking and popping returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a low, guttural groan, like the slow grinding of unseen gears. She started to find strange, organic patterns appearing in the plaster on the walls, patterns that seemed to shift and reform when she wasn't looking directly at them. One evening, she stumbled upon a hidden cavity behind a loose floorboard in the master bedroom. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and inside, a skeletal hand, impossibly small, seemed to twitch. A voice, dry and brittle like old bone, whispered from the shadows, "Fit us." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Eleanor reached into the cavity. Her fingers brushed against countless small bones, dry and smooth, fitting together with an eerie precision. As she assembled them, the house seemed to hum with a growing energy. The rhythmic creaking intensified, becoming a deafening roar, as if the entire structure was convulsing. She felt her own body contorting, her limbs twisting into unnatural angles, her bones shifting beneath her skin. As the final bone clicked into place, the house groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to rise from its very foundations. The walls pulsed with a faint, internal light, and the very air vibrated with a profound, living presence. Eleanor felt her own identity dissolving, her human form becoming one with the house's shifting structure. She was no longer Eleanor, the engineer, but a living extension of the house's skeletal memory, a conduit for its silent, unending transformations. The house in the cul-de-sac is quiet now, the creaking and popping ceased. But if you stand within its walls, you might feel a subtle tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might hear a low, guttural groan, not of settling timber, but of something far, far older, forever shifting beneath its skin. 4. The last whisper of the bell tower. The ancient bell tower on the forgotten moor stood a lonely sentinel, its bells long silent, its purpose lost to time. David, a retired bell founder, had purchased it, hoping to restore its colossal bronze bells to their former glory. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it was a vast, echoing emptiness, imbued with the memory of forgotten chimes. His first night, he heard it, a faint, high-pitched hum, like a single bell vibrating, yet no bell was ringing. He dreamt of towering bronze, of the sound of 1,000 voices trapped within metal, of the profound sorrow of unmade music. In the morning, the hum was gone, but the air felt strangely resonant, as if lingering vibrations still hung in the dust. He found a single, perfectly polished bronze shard on his workbench, humming faintly, a shard that he was certain hadn't been there before. David began to explore the towering bell tower, drawn by an invisible force. The hum returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a soft, mournful sigh, like wind passing through ancient, empty vessels. He started to find intricate, swirling patterns appearing on the ancient bronze bells, patterns that seemed to shift and deepen with the light. One evening, he discovered a hidden chamber beneath the largest bell, its entrance obscured by centuries of grime. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and in the center, a perfectly preserved human skeleton lay, its hands clasped around a small, tarnished bronze clapper. A voice, clear and resonant like a struck bell, echoed in the stillness, "Ring our sorrow." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, David reached for the clapper. As his fingers brushed against the cold metal, a tremor ran through the tower, and the hum intensified, becoming a deafening roar. The ancient bells began to vibrate in unison, their silent sorrow transforming into a resonant, unearthly lament that vibrated through his very bones. His own body felt as if it were transforming, his skin becoming smooth and cold, his voice deepening into a profound, echoing tone. As the lament reached its crescendo, the bell tower groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to rise from its very foundations. The chamber pulsed with a faint, internal light, and the very air vibrated with a profound, living presence. David felt his own consciousness dissolving, his human thoughts replaced by the vast, echoing memory of bronze. He was no longer David, the bell founder, but a living extension of the tower's sorrow, a conduit for its endless, unmade music. The ancient bell tower is silent once more, but if you listen closely on a windless night, you might hear a faint, lingering echo, a sorrowful hum, a note that was never meant for mortal ears, forever sung by the forgotten bells of the moor. 5. The root cellar's breath. The secluded farmhouse on the edge of the sprawling wheat fields had been abandoned for generations, its windows dark, its porch crumbling. Clara, a reclusive artist seeking inspiration, leased it, drawn by the oppressive, almost sentient quiet of the empty landscape. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it felt watchful, imbued with an unseen, patient waiting. Her first night, she heard it, a low, rhythmic exhalation, like a vast, unseen creature breathing, emanating from somewhere beneath the house. She dreamt of being buried alive, of the weight of the earth pressing down, of struggling against an invisible, suffocating presence. In the morning, the breathing was gone, but the air felt heavy, dense, as if something had just passed through it. She found a single, unnaturally smooth, black stone on her bedside table, radiating a faint, internal warmth, a stone that she was certain hadn't been there before. The scent of damp earth permeated the entire house. Clara began to explore the farmhouse, drawn by an invisible current. The breathing returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, wet slapping sound, like something vast and slimy moving just beyond her reach. She started to find strange, organic patterns forming in the condensation on the windows, patterns that would slowly shift and melt away when she wasn't looking directly at them. One evening, she stumbled upon the entrance to the root cellar, hidden beneath a trapdoor in the pantry floor. The air within was thick with a profound, earthy cold, and from the oppressive darkness, a faint, bioluminescent glow pulsed. A voice, wet and ancient, whispered from the depths, "Join the earth." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Clara descended into the root cellar. The breathing became a deafening roar, reverberating through her very bones. The slapping sounds intensified, no longer distinct sounds, but a cacophony of ancient life, of things moving unseen beneath the earth, flowing directly into her mind. Her own body felt as if it were dissolving, her skin becoming rough and earthy, her fingers elongating into root-like tendrils. As she sank deeper, her vision became obscured by the swirling darkness and the faint, green glow. She felt a profound sense of connection, of being part of something vast and eternal, her individual consciousness dissolving into the collective consciousness of the earth. She was no longer Clara, the artist, but a living extension of the root cellar's breath, a conduit for its hidden, earth-bound memories. The farmhouse on the edge of the wheat fields is now quiet, save for the faint, rhythmic exhalation that emanates from the deep earth. If you wander near the old root cellar, you might feel a subtle tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might just hear a low, gurgling whisper, not of the wind, but of the very earth itself, forever murmuring its ancient secrets. 6. The Glade of Lost Echoes. The small, forgotten cottage nestled within the ancient, misty woods was accessible only by a winding, overgrown deer path. Finn, a reclusive sound designer, sought it out for its pristine natural acoustics, hoping to capture the pure, untouched resonance of the wilderness. The silence here wasn't empty. It was a profound, echoing stillness, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. His first night, he heard it, a faint, crystalline resonance, like tiny, far-off bells, echoing from deep within the woods. He dreamt of whispered names, of calls unanswered, of voices lost to the vast, encompassing silence. In the morning, the resonance was gone, but the air felt strangely fragile, as if lingering echoes still hung in the mist. He found a single, perfectly formed, impossibly smooth crystal shard on his windowsill, humming faintly, a shard that he was certain hadn't been there before. Finn began to explore the woods, drawn by an invisible current. The crystalline resonance returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a soft, mournful sigh, like wind passing through ancient, empty spaces. He started to find faint, swirling patterns appearing in the morning dew on the forest floor, patterns that would dissipate instantly if he tried to touch them. One evening, he stumbled upon a hidden glade, unnaturally clear of undergrowth, where the ancient trees formed a perfect circle. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and from the center, a single, perfectly formed, crystal sphere pulsed with a faint, internal light. A voice, clear and resonant like struck glass, echoed in the stillness, "Speak our names." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Finn reached for the sphere. As his fingers brushed against the cold crystal, a tremor ran through the glade, and the resonance intensified, becoming a deafening roar. The ancient trees began to hum in unison, their rustling leaves transforming into a cacophony of whispered names, a chorus of forgotten voices that vibrated through his very bones. His own voice began to warp, his words becoming a series of clicks and hums, his own identity dissolving into the collective echoes. As the chorus reached its crescendo, the glade groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to rise from the very heart of the earth. The crystal sphere pulsed with a blinding light, and the very air vibrated with a profound, living presence. Finn felt his own consciousness dissolving, his human thoughts replaced by the vast, echoing memory of the glade. He was no longer Finn, the sound designer, but a living extension of the glade's echoes, a conduit for its endless, unmade calls. The cottage in the misty woods is silent now, but if you wander into that hidden glade, you might feel a subtle tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might hear a faint, crystalline resonance, a chorus of whispered names, forever sung by the lost echoes of the glade. 7. The Gallery of Unseen Hands. The abandoned art gallery in the city's forgotten district was a monument to crumbling ambition, its vast, empty rooms smelling of dust and decaying canvas. Leo, a curator obsessed with forgotten masterpieces, had leased it, hoping to uncover its hidden artistic treasures. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it felt watchful, imbued with an unseen, creative tension. His first night, he heard it, a faint, rhythmic scratching, like a brush on canvas, coming from the empty rooms. He dreamt of invisible paint, of colors that shimmered only in the dark, of faces peering out from unseen portraits. In the morning, the scratching was gone, but the air felt thick with the faint scent of oil paint and turpentine. He found a single, perfectly clean paintbrush on his desk, its bristles still wet, a brush that he was certain hadn't been there before. The walls themselves seemed to subtly shift their texture. Leo began to explore the vast gallery, drawn by an invisible current. The scratching returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone tapping a palette knife. He started to find faint, luminous outlines of unseen figures appearing on the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light, only to disappear as he approached. One evening, he stumbled upon a hidden alcove behind a false wall, its entrance disguised as a blank canvas. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and in the center, a single, empty easel stood, its surface bearing a faint, swirling vortex of color. A voice, dry and brittle like old canvas, whispered from the shadows, "Finish us." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Leo reached for the easel. As his fingers brushed against the swirling colors, a tremor ran through the gallery, and the scratching intensified, becoming a frantic chorus of unseen brushes. The luminous outlines on the walls began to solidify, becoming three-dimensional, spectral figures, their eyes fixed on him. He felt his own hands moving, driven by an external force, painting on the unseen canvas. As the final stroke was laid, the gallery groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to rise from its very foundations. The alcove pulsed with a blinding light, and the very air vibrated with a profound, creative presence. Leo felt his own consciousness dissolving, his human thoughts replaced by the vast, unmade art of the gallery. He was no longer Leo, the curator, but a living extension of the unseen hands, a conduit for their endless, unmade masterpieces. The old art gallery is silent now, the scratching ceased. But if you stand within its empty rooms, you might feel a faint vibration in the air, and if you listen closely, you might hear the whisper of unseen brushes, forever painting, forever trapping the unmade art of the gallery's endless work. 8. The Puppet's Lament. The dilapidated old theater, deep in the forgotten heart of the city, had stood vacant for decades, its velvet seats ripped, its stage dark. Sarah, a puppeteer fascinated by forgotten performance arts, had leased it, hoping to bring life back to its silent halls. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it felt expectant, imbued with a lingering, almost palpable tension. Her first night, she heard it, a faint, rhythmic creaking, like wood rubbing against wood, coming from the stage. She dreamt of tiny, wooden limbs moving independently, of unseen strings manipulating her own body, of a silent, watchful audience. In the morning, the creaking was gone, but the air felt heavy with dust and the faint scent of old grease paint. She found a single, perfectly carved wooden hand on her bedside table, its fingers unnaturally long, a hand that she was certain hadn't been there before. The stage curtain seemed to subtly sway, despite no breeze. Sarah began to explore the vast theater, drawn by an invisible current. The creaking returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, soft tapping, like small, wooden feet dancing on the stage. She started to find strange, geometric patterns formed from discarded puppet strings on the floor, patterns that would unravel and reform when she wasn't looking directly at them. One evening, she stumbled upon a hidden dressing room, its mirror cracked and dark. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and in the center, a small, empty puppet stage stood, its curtains pulled back to reveal nothing but darkness. A voice, thin and reedy, whispered from the shadows, "Perform for us." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Sarah approached the puppet stage. As her fingers brushed against the velvet curtains, a tremor ran through the theater, and the creaking intensified, becoming a frantic chorus of unseen movement. The empty seats in the auditorium began to hum, a low, expectant thrum, as if a vast, invisible audience had gathered. She felt her own limbs moving, driven by unseen strings, performing a silent, agonizing dance. As the invisible performance reached its crescendo, the theater groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to rise from its very foundations. The stage pulsed with a faint, internal light, and the very air vibrated with a profound, living presence. Sarah felt her own consciousness dissolving, her human thoughts replaced by the silent, unseen performances of the theater. She was no longer Sarah, the puppeteer, but a living extension of the forgotten players, a conduit for their endless, unmade shows. The old theater is silent now, the creaking ceased. But if you stand within its empty halls, you might feel a faint vibration in the air, and if you listen closely, you might hear the whisper of unseen strings, forever manipulating, forever performing the unmade stories of the theater's endless play. 9. The Shipwreck's Hum. The isolated cottage on the windswept coastline overlooked a treacherous stretch of sea, known for its hidden shoals and countless wrecks. Miles, a marine archaeologist, leased it, drawn by the profound, unsettling quiet of the deep ocean that seemed to hum just beyond the waves. The silence here wasn't empty, it was a vast, echoing emptiness, imbued with the sorrow of countless lost vessels. His first night, he heard it, a faint, low thrumming, like a colossal engine underwater, emanating from the depths of the sea. He dreamt of sunken ships, of waterlogged cargo, of ghostly crews performing impossible tasks in the eternal darkness. In the morning, the thrumming was gone, but the air felt heavy with salt and the faint scent of rust. He found a single, perfectly smooth, barnacle-encrusted compass on his windowsill, its needle spinning wildly, a compass that he was certain hadn't been there before. The horizon seemed to subtly shimmer, obscuring the distant waves. Miles began to explore the coastline, drawn by an invisible current. The thrumming returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a faint, wet groaning, like stressed timbers under immense pressure. He started to find strange, geometric patterns formed by seaweed on the shore, patterns that would be washed away by the tide, only to reappear the next day. One evening, he stumbled upon a hidden cove, its entrance choked with jagged rocks. Inside, the skeleton of an impossibly large ship lay half buried in the sand, its mast shattered, its hull ruptured. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and from the deep, dark interior of the wreck, a faint, bioluminescent glow pulsed. A voice, wet and ancient, whispered from the depths, "Sail with us." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Miles entered the shipwreck. The thrumming became a deafening roar, reverberating through his very bones. The groaning intensified, no longer distinct sounds, but a cacophony of ancient voyages, of crews lost to the deep, flowing directly into his mind. His own body felt as if it were dissolving, his skin becoming slick with brine, his senses adapting to the crushing pressure of the sea. As he sank deeper into the wreck, his vision became obscured by the swirling darkness and the faint, green glow. He felt a profound sense of connection, of being part of something vast and eternal, his individual consciousness dissolving into the collective consciousness of the lost. He was no longer Miles, the archaeologist, but a living extension of the shipwreck's hum, a conduit for its hidden, ocean-bound memories. The cottage on the coastline is now quiet, save for the faint, rhythmic thrumming that emanates from the deep sea. If you wander near that hidden cove, you might feel a subtle tremor beneath your feet, and if you listen closely, you might just hear a low, gurgling whisper, not of the wind, but of the very ocean itself, forever murmuring its ancient secrets. 10. The Library of Whispering Ink. The sprawling, derelict manor house was known for its vast, forgotten library, its shelves crammed with crumbling tomes and unread manuscripts. Olivia, a literary restorer, had purchased it, drawn by the profound, almost sentient quiet of its decaying books. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it felt observant, imbued with the weight of unshared stories. Her first night, she heard it, a faint, rhythmic scratching, like a pen on parchment, coming from the library. She dreamt of words writing themselves, of stories unfolding in her mind without her conscious thought, of the profound truth whispered between the lines. In the morning, the scratching was gone, but the air felt thick with the scent of old paper and dust. She found a single, perfectly formed, antique quill pen on her bedside table, its tip stained with fresh, black ink, a pen that she was certain hadn't been there before. The books on the shelves seemed to subtly shift their positions. Olivia began to explore the vast library, drawn by an invisible current. The scratching returned each night, sometimes accompanied by a soft, rustling sigh, like countless pages turning in unison. She started to find faint, shimmering words appearing on the blank walls, forming sentences that would fade away if she tried to focus on them too hard. One evening, she stumbled upon a hidden alcove behind a revolving bookcase, its entrance disguised as a wall of blank, leather-bound volumes. The air within was thick with a profound cold, and in the center, a single, massive, empty desk stood, its surface covered in microscopic, unreadable script. A voice, dry and brittle like old parchment, whispered from the shadows, "Write us." Driven by an irresistible compulsion, Olivia reached for the quill pen. As her fingers closed around the cold wood, a tremor ran through the library, and the scratching intensified, becoming a frantic chorus of unseen pens. The shimmering words on the walls began to solidify, becoming three-dimensional, spectral figures, their mouths moving in silent dictation. She felt her own hand moving, driven by an external force, writing on the unseen parchment of the desk. As the final word was laid down, the library groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to rise from its very foundations. The alcove pulsed with a blinding light, and the very air vibrated with a profound, living presence. Olivia felt her own consciousness dissolving, her human thoughts replaced by the vast, unwritten narratives of the library. She was no longer Olivia, the restorer, but a living extension of the whispering ink, a conduit for its endless, unmade stories. The old manor library is silent now, the scratching ceased. But if you stand within its empty rooms, you might feel a faint vibration in the air, and if you listen closely, you might hear the whisper of unseen pens, forever writing, forever forming the unmade narratives of the library's endless work.